having a good morning. Diane's going to give me a heads up and let me know when we're ready to go. We have people from France and the UK and Croatia, all across the States, Israel. Ireland, Germany, Italy, Canada. Fabulous. All right, everyone. Welcome to our fourth salon of the Maternal Gift Economy Breaking Through series, hosted by Genevieve Vaughn and the International Feminists for the Gift Economy. I'm Letitia Layson, your moderator. We're delighted to have Heide Goettner-Abendroth and Barbara Mann with us today. Both of our guests will be speaking, followed by a Q&A. Jen is with us, so she'll join them in the Q&A and will be available for questions too. Check the bottom of your screen for the Q&A icon. That's the best place to put your question in. We have two women who will be moderating those two places, both the chat and the Q&A, Judith and Liliana. So thank you for that. The chat box is going to remain open during the talks for your comments. But if you find it distracting, please feel free to just close that. Some people want to just focus on the talk itself. We'll be together for the next few hours. So please remember to take care of yourself, have water, stretch, whatever your body needs to do, move around if you need that too, just so that you can focus. Today's salon is being recorded and will be available for viewing from our website, the maternalgifteconomymovement.org. All right, I think we're ready to begin. Our first speaker is Dr. Heide Goettner-Abendroth. She's a mother and a grandmother. She earned her PhD in philosophy of science at the University of Munich, where she lectured for 10 years. She has published on philosophy of science and extensively on matriarchal studies and culture, and through her lifelong research on matriarchal societies, has become the founder of modern matriarchal studies. Her magnum opus, Matriarchal Studies, Studies on Indigenous Culture Across the Globe, defines scientifically this new field of knowledge and provides a world tour of examples of contemporary matriarchal studies. She has been visiting professor at the University of Montreal in Canada and the University of Innsbruck in Austria. She lectured extensively at home and abroad. In 1986, she founded the International Academy Hagia for Matriarchal Studies in Germany, and since then has been its director. She guided 3 world congresses on matriarchal studies. In 2012, she received an award for her scholarship from the Association of the Study of Women in Mythology in San Francisco. She was twice nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. In 2005 by a Swiss initiative, 2007 by a Finnish initiative. Please welcome Heide.
Thank you so much, Letitia, for your kind introduction. I'm happy to give this lecture in honor to Genevieve Vaughn and the gift economy. The title of my speech is Matriarchal Politics and the Practice of Gift Giving. Matriarchal politics is based on modern matriarchal studies. Its intention is to create egalitarian, peaceful societies. What this means is shown to us by still extant matriarchal societies whose traditions go back to millennia. The economical, political, social, and cultural patterns are of utmost interest because they are founded on maternal values which have been taken from the behavior of the prototypical mother. The nurturing, caretaking, integrative attitude, mutual assistance, perfect gender balance, conflict resolution through negotiation, and peace building. In this way, in matriarchies, motherhood, which originates as a biological fact, is transformed into a cultural model. It is becoming increasingly clear that this radically different cultural model will have great significance for the future of women and mothers and of humankind in general. Therefore, I would like to make suggestions for new matriarchal egalitarian societies and look in which way they are based on the practice of gift giving. At first, let us look at the microstructures of a new matriarchal society. At the social level, the model of matriarchy means developing structures that foster various types of affinity or intentional communities, such as house communities, neighborhood units, and networks. Affinity communities arise from the maternal values just mentioned, through which a symbolic clan develops, resulting in a group that is more deeply connected than a mere association of interest. The matriarchal principle here is that such affinity groups are initiated, supported, and led by women. The determining criteria are the needs of mothers and children, who are the future of each society. It is clear that each of these affinity groups is a closed circle and based on eternal gift-giving, following the model of the mother. Being a circle is a framework within gift-giving can be practiced here. At the economic level, the perspective of an alternative subsistence economy arises. For the subsistence perspective means economic independence of each of these affinity communities. Subsistence entities engage in self-sufficient and independent activities in which quality of life takes precedence over quantity. Subsistence economy in the hands of women is a matriarchal principle, for it is they who care for their affinity groups. However, in such subsistence communities can be interconnected by a local network to ensure well-developed handicrafts, technology, communication, and arts. It is up to the women in which way they want to determine the framework of their giving practice. That means their gifting alliance with other local affinity groups. Such a framework is necessary because gift-giving cannot be practiced unlimited, not to become a self-exploitation. But it can be extended to local alliances in home villages and hometowns. As a result, a clearly defined local gift-giving between affinity communities can develop. At the level of political decision-making, the matriarchal consensus principle is basic for a truly egalitarian society. It is the inspiring stimulus for creating any matriarchal community. It establishes a balance between women and men and also between generations, as the elders as well as the youth have their say. This principle is a bedrock of democracy as it manifests what formal democracies promise but fail to deliver. The reason for this failure is that the consensus principle depends on the gift economy, because no consensus can be achieved in a society of exploitation with groups of interest fighting against each other. To implement the consensus principle in future means to develop a system of councils, smaller and broader, which are all interconnected to make decisions on different levels, such as the communal, the local, and the regional level. Matriarch politics cannot extend beyond the regional level. Here, the smaller units of society, responsible for engendering person-to-person and transparent politics, are given preference. They must not become so big that people cannot see through them and cannot participate in their decisions, as is the case in today's national states and superpowers. But they must be big enough to safeguard the diversity of the regional subsistence economies, handicrafts, technologies, and arts, based on a network of villages and towns. Again, women define the framework of their gift-giving practice in regional alliances, which can be created by connecting the local networks of villages and towns of a region. Now, a clearly defined regional gift-giving will develop. The cultural level of spiritual attitudes and beliefs is extremely important for matriarchal society as well as for gift-giving. The respect for Mother Earth and the new sacralization of the world influences all of the other levels of a matriarchal society. Mother Earth gives in abundance, and all human gift-giving depends on her. If this is recognized, as it is in the feminist and matriarchal spirituality, and if this is theorized, as it is in the theory of the gift economy, the way is open for a well-grounded, intentional gift-giving practice. This consciousness makes it possible to transcend the limits of gift-giving circles and of local and regional gifting networks, because it can be spread without limits by convincing other people of matriarchal politics and the gift economy. But at the same time, it sets the limits how far the practice of gift-giving can grow. For beyond this awareness, gift-giving stops in order not to be absorbed by a non-gifting society and its mechanisms of exploitation. This new consciousness begins with the mothers. If they are aware of the high value of their fundamental gift-giving, then they can change the perspective radically. They will stop to offer remedies to the patriarchal problems, bolstering the system by their daily work, but can start to transgress it. They will adopt the ideas of matriarchal politics and gift economy, which will guide their way. Now, let us have a look at the macro structures of a new matriarchal society. Regionalism. A new matriarchal society does not extend beyond its own region. It is a network of communities in villages and of neighborhoods in towns. These village republics and town republics are mutually independent, but interconnected by a framework of gift-giving. The borders of a region are not random, like national borders are. Rather, they have developed out of the conditions of the landscape, that is, out of the capacities of Mother Earth at special places, and out of cultural traditions. Regional borders are formed by the decisions of the people themselves, who want to live together on the basis of common cultural traditions and the practice of gift-giving adapted to the environment. This adjustment to the environment always includes a deep respect for Mother Earth and the willingness to avoid any exploitation of a natural region in order to make profit by its resources elsewhere. The result will be a truly ecological attitude and a regional healing of Mother Earth. Thus, the ideal dimension for a matriarchal lifestyle is that of the region. And in our vision, independent, flourishing regions remain the political goal. The interregional level. However, neighboring matriarchal regions can also associate by gift-giving. For example, if a region is situated at the seacoast, it can send products of the sea, such as shells and amber, to another region situated in the mountains, which can send beautiful stones and rock crystals to the region at the sea. But these goods must not be necessary for daily life and remain purely luxury goods to create friendship without any intention to make another region dependent. In this way, interregional connections can become possible by a special framework of an interregional gift-giving practice. These interregional alliances are not limited to material goods. Again, matriarchal spirituality and the theory of gift-giving are the connecting powers. Although a matriarchal society as a structure cannot be constituted beyond the region, it can create alliances with other regions through ideas and knowledge given as gifts. These interregional bonds are of a purely spiritual kind and are expressed symbolically. In this way, a free horizontal network of sister regions can be created, completely distinct from today's centralist hierarchical state structures. In the age of modern communication technology, these spiritual alliances are not limited to neighboring regions, as it is with material gift-giving, but can link to other countries and even to other continents. A sister region in Europe can be associated with a sister region in South America or Africa or the Middle East, and they can share cultural gifts via internet. In this way, interregional associations among matriarchal regions could arise worldwide. At last, let us look at global structures. No more national states. National states no longer fit the bill for solving global problems. They are too big for transparent political processes. At the same time, they are too small to solve global problems that the current patriarchy creates and leaves behind for posterity. This is especially true regarding problems related to advanced destruction of the biosphere of the planet. These problems affect all of humanity, so global strategies are needed to solve them. Existing national states must be dissolved in two directions. On one hand, in the direction of the autonomous matriarchal regions. On the other hand, in the direction of a global structure with a purely executive status which has no state power. new distribution of national wealth. An initial and fundamental challenge is, therefore, to dissolve the financial wealth of each national state, first to the regions, and in the regions to the communities. Of course, it does not mean that the money goes to individuals or to patriarchal institutions. Rather, it is only distributed to matriarchal communities. Exactly half of this wealth, that is 50%, must go to women who are willing to create matriarchal affinity communities and cooperatives. But does this idea not directly contradict the idea and practice of gift giving? Let's have a closer look at this. The question is how this vision of a new matriarch society based on gift giving can be brought into being. It is impossible without changing the situation of today. I would like to quote a brief summary of the UN report about the current situation of women worldwide, which is published annually. It clearly shows the facts. Women work 66% of all hours worked worldwide and produce 50% of the food. But they get 10% of the world income, own 1% of the property, and represent 60% of the world's poorest. UN Conference 2010. What a scandal that is. Yet no one seems to get worked up about it. This situation prevents women to create their own way of life and will continuously prevent them from doing so. The current horrendous flow of money into male projects, the military, multinational corporations, monumental prestige buildings, ego architecture, big sports stadiums, not to mention all the huge political events costing millions of dollars, that means that there is nothing left but pitifully small amounts for social services, as women are expected to provide these for free. It is the usual situation of exploiting women. This constant social and economic unbalance in which all of today's national states find themselves must come to an end. "50% of the wealth of each national state belongs to women, as half of humanity. It is their modest share for all what they had done for free through long periods of time. Thus, the demand of this time is 50% of the wealth of each national state to women, equally shared economy in all its aspects. By an equally shared economy, women could set up their own communal and cultural projects. That means women could, first, create their own communities and set up local subsistence economies for them, gardens, houses, farms, their own sharing circles. Women could start, second, to establish new infrastructures to fulfill social needs, their own schools, colleges, academies, and universities, in accordance with their own knowledge and values, which are never respected in patriarchal societies. Women could have, third, their own technical and medical facilities and their own health care. They could have their own publishing houses, bookstores, and distribution networks. They could have their own art galleries, theater buildings, and museums. Women could create their own spiritual sites, where they celebrate Mother Earth and their lives together with their communities. All of these cooperatives are based on maternal values and matriarchal communities, and they develop as the germs of a matriarchal society. At the same time, when they are in the process of being established, they start to practice gift giving. That is, the internal gift giving inside the communities and cooperatives, the local gift giving as alliances of communities in villages and towns, the regional gift giving as alliances of villages and towns within a special region, the interregional gift giving between alliances of different regions in material or spiritual form. In that way, the financial wealth of the equally shared economy in the hands of women and mothers will be converted into a broad but well-structured gift economy. The revolutionary potential of matriarchal politics and of the gift economy will unfold. Global councils for global problems. To solve global problems, these steps from below must nevertheless be supplemented with more comprehensive structures. These are not above, as there is no above in this sense in matriarchal societies. They are just more comprehensive. The development of matriarchal regions must be accompanied by a global council formed by matriarchal women and matriarchal men. It will be established as a Women's Global Council and a Men's Global Council. Today, the UN tries to form such a global council, but because of its patriarchal structure, which excludes the issues of women and of many peoples, and because of the power plays of the superpowers on this level, fails to fulfill its ideals. As a consequence, the other direction in which the wealth of national states should be dissolved is to the bodies of the Women's Global Council and the Men's Global Council. The Global Council's assets would be used exclusively to solve the global problems of the polluted air and water and soil and the damaged life on Earth. That is, to clean up the technology-caused legacy of pollution by military powers and industrial corporations. Members of the Global Council are always elected delegates from each region and are responsible to their region. They have no power to make decisions independently of their region's determinations. They accompany the development of matriarchal regions, facilitate and coordinate the decisions of all these regions worldwide. With these structures, what we call a state dissolves, regardless of its form. The concept and image of the hierarchical state, no matter how constituted, have become redundant. Patriarchal history of established domination began with the formation of states. With the development of new matriarchal societies, which are free of domination and based on the gift-giving, a new, humane history of cultures could begin. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Indeed, may new matriarchal cultures begin. And also, there are many contiguous matriarchal cultures in our from our indigenous people. So with that, I'd like to introduce Barbara Mann, our next speaker. Dr. Barbara Mann is a scholar and a professor in the Honors College of the University of Toledo in Toledo, Ohio, USA. She has authored 15 books, the latest of which are President by Massacre, Indian Killing for Political Gain, and Spirits of Blood, Spirits of Breath, the Twinned Cosmos of Indigenous America. Other works include The Tainted Gift, on the deliberate spread of disease to natives by settlers as a land clearing tactic. Dr. Mann is currently working on an international project examining historical massacres around the world, 1780 to 1820, and is participating in a book project on that. Her internationally noted Iroquois Woman is in its third printing. Two other internationally known books, George Washington's War on Native America, Daughters of Mother Earth, out in paperback as Make a Beautiful Way. She has published over 400 articles and chapters since 1995. She lives in her homeland and works for the rights of the people indigenous to Ohio, living in Ohio. Ohio is a Seneca word meaning beautiful river, a spiritual designation. An Ohio Bear Clan Seneca with community recognition. She was for 20 years the speaker and/or Northern Director of the Native American Alliance of Ohio. Welcome, Barbara.
All right, I guess. All right, thank you very much for that introduction, Letitia. I wanted to follow up on what Dr. Goettner-Abendroth so brilliantly laid out by giving very specific examples of how the Iroquois and Eastern Woodlanders generally worked out the dynamics of matriarchal gift economy. Now, I'm an extremely visual person, so I like visual aids. And I have created a visual aid, so I want to share my screen here. Okay. And here it is. I called the presentation It Takes Two to Tango because obviously gifting requires a giver and a receiver, and they have to exist in some kind of relationship. So it seemed to me that was a nice little image. People tango by twos. And I think it's important to recognize that in Native America, a second, let me dip something here. In Native America, one, which is considered a whole number by Westerners, is considered a fraction. One is not a whole number, it's just half a number. The whole number is two. So when you're looking at these two images on the left, Westerners count four people, 1, 2, 3, 4. Native Americans look at that and see two, because everything that exists in pairs. And you do not have a full number until you have two operating in cooperation, mirroring one another, complementing one another's activities. So this is the twin principle, the twinship principle of the Eastern Woodlands, in fact, of the Americas. Everything that happens by two. They exist in complements and they mirror one another. So you have blood and breath. That's typically what you'd say in the East. You go west of the Mississippi, it's more likely to be air and water. Same difference. Blood is water. Blood is kinship. Blood is amniotic fluid. Blood is the rivers and the lakes. Breath is air, oxygen, the blue atmosphere, spatiality, wide open spaces. Okay, now blood gives rise to the mother and suckling child principle. So I've got a couple pictures here of twins just to give you the idea of that's two. Those are two. It's not 4, it's 2. So there's a lot of iconography in Native America of blood and breath. By and large, the square, not by and large, always, the square is the square of Earth. That means the planet, the directions, and is considered blood, water, amniotic fluid design. The iconography of the sky is the circle, obviously the circle of sky around. By and large, Earth is connected with women, sky is connected with men. And they both have to exist and they both have to interact on a complementary basis if existence is going to continue. And you see this motif played out over and over and over again in the mounds that are all the way across America, especially in the eastern woodlands. An awful lot of these have been destroyed by the settlers. For example, in 1900, there were still 12,000 ceremonial and burial mounds in the state of Ohio. By 1950, that was down to 5,000. And I've been scared to ask what it is now, because people destroy these without the slightest thought of what they're doing. But looking at this particular design, which comes from the 1848 Smithsonian survey commissioned with Squire and Davis, who were two surveyors, they went out and they took a look at all these monuments that were built. And they're very large areas. They're like dozens and dozens of acres each. So you see the square of Earth there leading to water. Water is always a very important component. So the river is there almost always to the east. And here you see on the bottom to the right, the square of Earth connected with the circle of sky. And right in the middle of the circle of sky there, I don't know if you can make it out, is a mound. In that instance, a burial mound. So these are connected. There's always a pathway between them. And it's really important because there's always a pathway between the two halves of the twinship. They do not exist in isolation, they exist together. Another motif that you see throughout the world is the circle motif, and this is based on turtle. Some of you may have heard that the Americas are Turtle Island. North America is a turtle swimming to the northeast. Alaska is a flipper to the west. Maine, that's a flipper to the right. Canada, kind of angling towards Greenland to get a good bite out of it. That's the head. Yeah, the carapace is California coast and the Atlantic coast. You got Florida, back flipper, Baja Peninsula, another back flipper. Mexico is the tail. South America is a remora fish swimming up to attach itself to the turtle. So we knew what the continents looked like. We always knew. And so we called it Turtle Island because that's how it looked to us. All right, so what have we got here? Women associated with Earth, which is turtle. Men associated with sky, which is the atmosphere. And the circle in the center is the back of turtle rising out of the water. And then you've got the atmosphere around it. On the right, you have the same thing in profile. So you're looking at the back of turtle rising out of the water with the sky above it. And again, you have that male-female complement going on. So you see that, for example, in this motif. This is right in Kentucky, right south of Portsmouth, Ohio, right across the Ohio River. So you've got the circles around, ripples as the turtle rises from the water. Right in the center there, it says turtle's back. That's a burial mound. Around it, the ripples are coming up to the water, but also this is a Lenape mound. Lenapes envision reality as layers of dimensions, and those are the various dimensions radiating out from the center. On the left, you see a turtle, what a turtle looks like when it's coming up out of the water, and you can see where the iconography of the rising back comes from. All right, now this twinship principle actually underpins the gift economy. Again, you've got to have two, everything happens by twos, by fours, by eights, it's exponential. I want you to take a look at this iconography here. Remember what we just saw in the Kentucky example? Square in the center, circles around, water around, another circle around. What you're looking at on the left is Tenochtitlan, when the Spaniards first arrived before they destroyed it in 1524. That iconography was used to actually build the city of Tenochtitlan in the center of the Lake of the Moon. On the right, you've got a detail of exactly that design that comes from Pike County, Ohio. Square of earth in the center, circle of sky around, and off to the right, you see the motif in profile. This happens over and over and over again throughout the Americas, and it's more than just earth and sky, it's twinship. They have to happen together. All right, now this has to do with directions and gendering. Native American cultures are heavily gendered. A lot of Westerners thinks that means patriarchy. It doesn't, it does not. What it means is there are equal associations with each and they must interface the right way. Now for the Iroquois, east-west is male, north-south is female. Some nations do it in a different way. But what we've got here is east and west, male, north, south, female. Now, that looks like 4, again, to Westerners, but it's not, it's 2. You got east-west is one line, north-south is another line. And you see that cross motif is another one that you see happening throughout the Eastern woodlands. Interestingly, Native Americans tend to look at the in-between spaces instead of the down lines. So what I've got on the right, top, mixed, I've got breath, and on the bottom left, I've got mixed, and then I've got blood. You've got blood and breath interfacing on the diagonal. And then you've got them mixed, because there's always blood and breath, and there's always breath and blood. As you can see in the little diagram on the right. They always interface, they're always connected. Neither of them is disparate, neither of them is discrete, they're always together. And I put the turtle in there because that's where he belongs. All right, now in the mountains, you get a lot of imagery of pregnancy, fecundity, and Mother Earth holding it all. And that's what you're looking at here. You've got Mother Earth, and she's holding the circle of sky and the square of earth. She's coordinating them. I want you to notice that she's pregnant. She is always pregnant. Lactation is a really, really important image for Native America and the gift economy. Part of the idea of lactation is you're taking care of the weak. There's nothing weaker than a newborn baby, nothing. And so you will nurse that baby, you will take care of that baby, you will be careful of that baby. And mother is in charge, but that doesn't mean she's a tyrant. It means she's responsible and she has obligations. And in Native America, the older you are, the larger your obligations. It's assumed that elders are more competent than youngers. Elders must do everything. They are responsible. If something goes wrong, it's their fault. They're supposed to know better. So you see Mother Earth holding up everything here. And there are other motifs. Here's another one. And you can see the burial mounds inside the square on the right. I just flipped it because when Squire and Davis did it, they didn't know what they were looking at. So I flipped it so you can see what was going on there. The burial mounds are important because we have reincarnation. Typically, people reincarnate 4 times because it's a reflection of the twinship. You can see them going into the round pregnant womb area, into the amniotic fluid. That's a really important thing. And you also see a kind of thing that looks like a smile. That's the rising turtle, giving birth, giving birth, giving birth. Now, even though men and women are equal, women alone control the economy. It's in the Constitution. Women are the progenitors of the soil. They own everything that comes from the soil. And that means all the goods that come from earth and all the people that come from women. That's women alone, women are responsible. On the left, this is from Parker's Iroquois uses a maze in 1910. And you see a Seneca woman in the fields. She's using a buffalo ridge there rather than a more traditional mound, because by 1910, the Europeans were really messing with us and wouldn't let us do the traditional mounds. So people did the best. I remember when we were a kid, we mounded it a little bit, but you had to be really careful because the Europeans got very angry if you started trying to do things a traditional way. So this woman is kind of half cooperating, half not, with a buffalo ridge. You can see a little raised area there. On the right, you've got two Ottawa grandmothers from this area, from Northwest Ohio. I've never been able to find out their names, but it was a mother and a daughter, and they were two elders from the Odawa people. All right, now, the imagery of suckling, you not only have pregnancy, you have suckling, you have children suckling, very important imagery. And it's applied to men as well as women. The Europeans, when they first heard us applying it to men, just couldn't understand. They thought it was some kind of horrible gay thing going on. They didn't understand what they were looking at. But it's very common to say of a really good chief who makes sure, male chief, makes sure that the people have the food they need. It's very common to say his breasts are large and give much milk. That's a very common phrase. It's a standing metaphor throughout the woodlands. And I want you to notice that it's female-based imagery. Right? Women are creating the wealth, they're creating the milk that's feeding the people. And if you've ever raised corn, used corn, cooked corn, you know it makes kind of milk. So that was really important to us. Now the women make it, so the women control it. It doesn't come out of the breast until the woman releases it to the child, right? Hopefully. Women hold all the goods and services necessary to life. When the men come back from the hunt, they give it to the women. And this happens to this day. The men come back, bag the deer, give it to the woman. She's the one that takes care of it. She's the one that distributes it to whoever needs to eat and whoever she's responsible for. And it's her job to ensure that everybody gets what they need. Every 2 years, traditionally, every 2 years, who's in charge changes. And as Dr. Goettner-Abendroth was saying, you've got to make sure that the community is small enough to see what's going on. If everybody can see how things are being managed, it's a lot harder to get away with favoritism than if you've got some large anonymous group. So we have small groups and we have changing leadership. In fact, out west, some of the Pueblo, every 6 months, the leadership changes. Mounds are considered the breasts of Mother Earth. These are plant mounds, any kind of mounds that we had. They were envisioned as breasts of Mother Earth. Why? Because you planted in them and they grew. The crops, the corn, bean, squash, which co-grow naturally, but which were hybridized. We hybridized corn, everything else. And Dr. Goettner-Abendroth was saying you can distribute knowledge. You sure can. You sure can. One of the things we do in our large gifting alliances was if somebody invented something neat, for example, in the year 500 or so, when the Seneca men invented bow and arrow with flint tip, they immediately sent moccasins as speakers out to all the gifted allied nations and showed them how to do that too. When the women invented a better way to make a watertight basket, they immediately sent out moccasins, young women who would demonstrate the technique to all the gifted alliance people. Now everybody knew how to do this better thing. That's the kind of thing you would also share, and you can go great distances. Sometimes it would take years to get to everybody that you knew. So the suckling principle is very important. Sharing knowledge is suckling people too. The idea is if you're stronger this person over here, you share, you take care of that weaker person, either until he or she becomes strong, or if that person's never going to be strong, let's say that somebody is born with Down syndrome, you take care of that person forever, forever. Why? Because the weak take care of the strong. It's the suckling principle. Now, a lot of people say, oh, why did the Aztecs give gifts to Cortez? Why didn't they kill him on the beach? Because we're a gift economy. That's why. What happened when Moctezuma first met Cortez? He arrived with a ton of gifts. First of all, he kissed Mother Earth. This is right in the chronicles that were at the time. First of all, he kissed Mother Earth. Then he gave Cortez pearl that comes from water, quartz that comes from the ground, gold that comes from the ground, silver that comes from the ground. That's all Mother Earth stuff. Why? Because they arrived in ships. He also gave lavishly embroidered cloths with all the colors made from plants and 6,000 bolts of woven cotton. Right? People say, oh, why'd they do it? It was foolish. Well, Westerners say that. He did it because Cortez and his men were poor and weak. They stank. They had terrible food. Their clothes were tattered. They were barefoot. And the Aztecs were rich and strong. So Moctezuma suckled them. That was the right thing to do. That was the proper thing to do. I just have that picture of the featherwork ceremonial shield because it's a very beautiful example of the kind of cloth that was given to Cortez. All right, so what Moctezuma was trying to do was create a gifting alliance with the Spaniards. They were brand new people coming in. So the first thing to do, just exactly as Dr. Goettner-Abendroth said, you expand the circle. You draw people in. So as an example, in the year 1142, when the Iroquois League was ratified by all 5 nations, we had the 5 nations. Immediately, runners were sent out to all the nations around us saying, come join us in this alliance. Come sit beneath the tree of peace with us. We invited a lot of others in. Some, like the Cherokee, said, thanks, we already have our own league, but we'll be friendly. But by 1780, 600 years, 650 later, there were now 6 full nations in the league and 61 nations in the gift alliance. Right? And this meant that goods could be traded, not traded, they weren't traded, they were given across the entire expanse of the Eastern Woodlands. And in fact, we had things from the West Coast, California. California had things from the Mid-Atlantic coast, things from the Gulf wound up in Michigan, things from Michigan wound up in the Black Hills. We had alliances all over the place, and these gifts would go in every direction. Yes, food is a little hard to keep. We would dry food, but usually people raised their own food, and if somebody was in need, the nation close to them was the one that would share the food. And then if everybody along the line is sharing food, everybody's got enough. This is how it expands. You invite people, you got to go out and invite them. So here's what was going on with Moctezuma. A new kingdom came in. So on the left, you got the gifting alliances that stood. Newcomer, drag them in. You bring that diamond in. By the way, the diamond is the traditional symbol of a fire. So you have all these people in Fire Alliance, some bigger, some smaller, all in the gifting alliance. So you see a newcomer, bring them in immediately. That's why we always gave gifts to the Europeans when they first arrived. They didn't know what it was. They thought they were getting a good deal. They ran away giggling. But what we were doing was establishing a gifting circle. The ultimate result of this is that communal wealth is enhanced. And it happened on all occasions. It wasn't just at certain times of the year. Anytime you go to a council, you bring whatever you got to give away. Okay, and you try to bring your best stuff. You don't bring old rickety stuff. If you bring rickety stuff, it means you're really poor. Okay? Nobody's omitted. Everybody brings something, even if it's just a rock. And then you put it down and people pick things up. There is no sense of equivalency. It's not like, well, I gave you a beautiful dress and you gave me a rock. No, 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 no. Whatever you get, that's what you got. Here's some pictures from the early 20th century of people laying down their gifts. Now, typically here we would have tables, but there they just put them right down on the boardwalk. Here you see some in the share bowls. You would put things actually in those bowls. You give something, you give some, you take some. So the idea is to expand the circle indefinitely until everybody is fed, clothed, housed, and cared for, and that is the recipe for peace. Okay, stop the share here. Okay, so I'm ending the share at this point, and I hope you've got some idea of how the twinship principle now works in conjunction with the gift economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. That was very dynamic and very powerful. I think the one thing that is so critical to understand in your presentation was that one is a fraction of the whole, and that two together creates a whole, and that twinship is central to this notion and idea, and then to expand the circle, which is what we're doing here, is expanding the circle and the awareness. So thank you so much. It's incredibly exciting to have you and Heidi together with Genevieve to be able to answer questions that people have for us and for you. So with that, if we're ready for questions, let's start with Judith. Do you have a question, Judith, for one of the speakers? Judith, you need to unmute.
Yeah. This is a question for Heide, and if you could just say something about the misconception that matriarchy means that the women rule. Barbara has talked about this a little bit, but someone sent this in as a question for Heide.
This is an old misinterpretation which is going on, and I think it's really outdated now. For every indigenous matriarchal society which I could get knowledge about, they are all egalitarian, gender egalitarian. They are based on consensus and of sharing goods, and they have a developed practice of gift giving. This misconception is that matriarchy is the rule of women over men. I think this is a patriarchal invention to put down this idea that also a different form of society which is not constructed hierarchical is possible. They try with this misconception idea, they try to get rid of the debate and the knowledge about matriarchal societies. Matriarchal societies are fundamentally egalitarian. So I cannot say anymore. I know it's all around this misconception, and people think that's true, but it's a wrong idea. They say, you often hear that they proclaim matriarchy never existed. Of course, if you conceptualize matriarchy as women's rule over men in the same way as patriarchy, men rule over women, this doesn't exist. It never has existed. But matriarchy is in realistic matriarchies everywhere exist, even today in indigenous cultures, and they have existed over a long period of time as egalitarian and consensus-based societies which put mothers at the center but not at the top.
Thank you, Heidi. Barbara, did you want to have any other words to put into that question?
Oh, obviously, Dr. Goettner-Abendroth is absolutely correct. The Iroquois Confederacy does have one rule that men cannot discuss an issue that the women grandmothers have not sent forward. And that's because the grandmothers met it first because it's earth. And this is where the term grassroots comes from Native America. As Nakashadanza, the grassroots of the popular sovereignty issues come up first through the feet of the women from grassroots. The women first assimilate them, give birth to that idea, and then pass it along to the men. So there's an order in which ideas are considered. That in a way controls an agenda, but at the same time, the men get their say. Men get their say, everything. What it does is it slows down consideration so that nobody can just run away with an idea half-cocked. And that's actually a very good thing. And by the way, the grandfathers are the ones that interface with the grandmothers. It's not little boys. I think one of the big problems you see in Western culture is that so many young men are running around telling grandfathers what to do. Bad idea. And grandfathers are not talking to the grandmothers. Even worse idea. So in matriarchies, that does not happen. Grandfathers are very attentive to grandmothers and vice versa. Again, two before you have one.
That's beautiful, Barbara. Thank you so much. Liliana, do you have a question for us?
I have a question for Barbara Mann from Sharon Barnes. The question is, wondering if you would talk about outlier individuals in the Iroquois communities. Was there a discipline structure, or did young folks just learn by example, approval or disapproval?
Well, yeah, it was an example structure. We invented the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. What we had were Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And from the time you could walk around independently, you were part of the group of children. Whoever was the eldest in that group was in charge. They were responsible to make sure nobody fell in the fire, nobody fell in the river. So from the time maybe you're 4 and your little brother's 3, you're responsible. You're responsible. So you grow up with that sense of responsibility towards the weaker ones. That will go a long way to keep people from becoming outliers and crazy out by themselves, because you're always with somebody, you're always part of a group, you're always accepted in one way or another. And eventually you're going to be the older one and you get to do that too. And find out it's not as much fun as it looks like when you're the little one. So it's less often than in Western culture would you see an outlier. Now, there is such a thing as mental illness. And when people are mentally ill, it's very hard for them to coordinate. So as an example of a critic in the late 18th century, a critic of Scandinavia was like a prophet. And he was very vocal and very disruptive in council and constantly mocking the prophet. Now, one day, the people noticed he wasn't around. They went, where is he? Where is he? So they sent out a search party to see if they could locate this guy. They found him sitting in a snake pit, surrounded by snakes, with snakes crawling up his arm and around his body, and eating live snakes. And they thought, oh my, his mind is gone. His mind is gone. And so they disentangled him from the snakes, and they gently led him back to the village. And they sat him down, they fed him, they washed him, they took care of him. And from that point forward, didn't matter what he said, because nobody listened to him, his mind was gone. They just took care of him, no matter what he said. All right, so that was how you handle an outlier. If somebody goes so far as to tell consistent lies or to kill somebody, that person might get banished. If they're insane, it's another matter, but if they're sane enough to know what they're doing, that person's off on his own and nobody's going to help them anymore. But you have to really have gone to extremes before that happens.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Judith, do you have a question for us?
This is another question, a very brief question for Barbara, and Heide talked about this a little bit. Barbara talked about the community being small enough, and several people wondered what does small enough mean, and the suggested number was 100.
Is that the question? Okay. It would depend. You would have long houses, probably, depending on how many clans were in that particular town. You would have to have both the east and the two halves, the turtle and the wolf half of the clan moieties, and then whatever lineages were in those, you had different clan lineages. So there would probably be about 5. You could have up to 60 people in each long house. So, 200 is a small group. 500 to 1,000 is okay. The largest towns we had in the 17th century were about 15,000. They've done psychological studies. I noticed later, they're quite into that. Western psychologists did. Typically, you can know and have a say in a group of about 10,000. It's not as big a say as you might like. So that's kind of the outer limits. Groups of 3,000 to 5,000, you can still be known. You know everybody. You can know that many people and still consider them all. You got to remember, some of those people are little kids. Some of those people are 100 years old and a little senile, right? So the group that's actually doing the coordinating and has the obligation is probably going to be like 500 to 700. Right? So that's about large enough. You can know everybody. You can have a really good sense of who the people are, especially since you grew up with them. Larger than that, not a good idea. Not a good idea at all.
Thank you. Liliana, do you have a question for us? Liliana, you need to unmute.
Sorry about that. This is a question from Julia Beck to both Heidi and Barbara. How did lesbians fit in with existing matriarchies?
I do.
Go ahead, Barbara, and then we'll take Heidi.
Okay. Well, we always had more than 2 genders. That was no big problem. By and large, matriarchies don't have trouble with multiple genders. And in fact, if somebody was that kind of boundary crosser, we just made them shamans, because you cross what looks like a natural boundary and you do it with ease. Wow, you must know more than the rest of us. We better listen to you.
Yes, can I speak?
Yes.
I would like to add an example of Mexico, of the city of Juchitán, which my friend Veronica Benholt-Thompson has researched very well, especially in regard to this question. They have no problem if a young person wants to change gender. But for changing gender, they don't need any surgery or hormones. They only dress. If a young boy wants to live like a woman, he is dressed like a woman, he is educated like a woman, and he goes into the action sphere of women in Juchitán, which is the market. the local market where the women give away and sell their homemade products. And the action sphere of men in Juchetan is agriculture. So if a young girl wants to be a man, she is dressed like a man, educated by the men, and she is working in the agriculture sphere. So individually, it's not difficult to change gender, but as Barbara said, the twinship principle in this society is well preserved. For the twinship principle here, it's the economic sphere. The local market is for women and agriculture is for men. This is well preserved. It's a matter of balance. The cosmos is imagined as by two powers, by two principles, which must be in balance. These societies organize themselves in a double way, for men or women, but this is not fixed. For example, in another society, as with Mozo in China, the women do the agriculture and men do the trade. This is not essentialist in no way, but this is important for them. For if you want to have a balanced society, you need to have which can be balanced. But the individual choice is free. I know it from Juchetan, where they simply go into the other action sphere of the other sex. And of course, when a young woman who has chosen to be a man because she is working in the agriculture sphere will have a love, then she will choose a woman from the other action sphere. And this we would call this lesbian, but they have not this idea, this notion, because a woman who is working in the action sphere of the men is regarded as a man and the other as a woman. So they come together, and this is also no problem for them. For us, it's quite different. We have this term of lesbians, and it's a political issue that women choose also a female partner is completely different. We cannot compare this with indigenous societies, which I try to describe in short now how they manage this. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge because the word lesbian, which is a Western identifying term of women loving women, is not a concept in indigenous cultures. It isn't a form. And the challenge then becomes when Western culture and outside cultures or developing cultures or indigenous cultures are trying to explain the culture across the divide. There's a lot of miscommunication and frustration because there isn't that term. I have that experience in my own family. My aunt was with her partner for 70 years, but she never identified as a lesbian. It wasn't a word that was part of the culture. They adopted children, they had family, they weren't ostracized. I think that's a construct that's very hard to get. Yes, thank you.
No, it's not about sexual love. I see so many people in the chat talking about how, oh, it's sexual love. No, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. You're free.
Right. It doesn't have the same constraints.
No.
It's a private matter. It's something that is completely between two consenting adults. And because the cultures allow for that, the Western culture, which is very oppressed and has to define sex in different categories and how you love in different categories, it's not the same in indigenous cultures. They don't even have that word. There's not a translatable word for lesbian. I know that's a hard concept.
I would like to add that it's not the sex which makes an individual a woman or a man. It's the action sphere. Where you are working, then you join into the women's sphere, then you are a woman. So this is a concept. it's very alien to us. We have to reconstruct our minds to understand this. And I think it's very difficult, as Letitia has explained, to compare our political situation with the situation of indigenous societies. In our society, it's a matter of oppression of women and of oppression of love between women and so on. And indigenous societies don't have this type of oppression part of society or a group of their own society. It's a big difference.
It's quite true. It's the job that's gendered, not the human being. It's just part of completing the twinship, and it doesn't matter who's doing it.
Thank you. Judith, do you have a question for us?
This one also is for both panelists, and it also has to do with emotional expression. And there's also a misconception that in a matriarchal society, the women are responsible for the emotional development or the and the caretaking work. And could they speak to that assumption?
Well, it's just another patriarchal overlay on an indigenous concept. Women obviously are going to breastfeed because I haven't noticed too many men that know how to do that. And especially before you have artificial milks. And even after, women are going to nurture the baby. So there's a certain amount that's going to be necessarily female. Beyond that, men tend to be the model for the boys, or anybody who wants to be boy-like. Women tend to be the model for the female gender. So the girls are going to be with ones that want to identify as female or with the females, ones that identify as male or with the mother's uncle. Mother's uncle is always the important male role model. So the boy identity will learn boy things, the girl identity will learn girl things. And the men have every bit as much responsibility for nurturing children as the women. Among the Pueblo people, by and large, the men do the regular daycare while the women are free to do something else. It just depends on the individual culture. The men will take care of the boys where I am, the girls will be with the women. It just depends on your particular way, the way that your particular culture lays out the duties. Somebody's got to raise the children. The notion that children are a bother and should be sloughed off on somebody else is entirely patriarchal and Western. And it's actually kind of child hating. One of the things that matriarchal cultures do is they actually like children and they actually like men.
Thank you. Heide.
Yes, I think this idea that women are responsible for the emotional sphere and for care work is a typical patriarchal idea. It even splits each individual in an intellectual and an emotional sphere. The intellectual sphere is male, the emotional is female. What a strange idea to create even a split within every human being. For every human being has an emotional part or has emotionality and has intellectuality, be it women or men. This is a patriarchal way to of creating hierarchy. Care work, of course, care work needs emotion. You cannot do care work if you have no empathy for children or people for whom you are caring. And this is in patriarchy a suppressed sphere. It's suppressed because it's belonging to women, and it can, yeah, this is suppressed. And you have the strange idea that all what is called natural in patriarchal society is for free and can be suppressed. So nature can be suppressed. What women are doing, creating life, giving birth, caring for children is nature. They do it by nature. So it's for free. Nobody has to care about them. It can be suppressed. But look at matriarch societies. Caring, nurturing, feeding other people is not a sphere. It's a value. It's a set of value which on which the whole society is constituted. As I said in my speech, these are maternal values, and motherhood is not suppressed and exploited in matriarchal societies. It is at the center. So the maternal values of caring, nurturing, looking for others, and creating, integrating people is a value which is followed by mothers and non-mothers, by women and men alike. These values are hold for everybody in a matriarch society. So you don't have a separate emotional sphere and an oppressed care work. Care work is for everybody, and emotional, everybody. Every human is emotional. It's good like that. And they not even have this idea of a split in the human individual, and make a hierarchy of different human abilities, what is typical for patriarchy.
Thank you, Heide. In terms of the gift economy, is there, one of the things that I notice is that we tend to gender the caring words like mothering or parenting, or to create a neutral thing. And I wonder, Barbara, is there a different word that's used when you care? We don't use the word mothering, maybe there's a different word. And I think that maybe that is something that challenges this idea of who takes care of the children and who raises the children. And Genevieve, in your theory, you try to bring forward this idea of mothering or motherer, that everyone actually does the caring. Is that correct, Jen? You just need to unmute just
Yes.
for a minute.
Yes. I do think that we are all motherers. We are all able to do gift giving. And in our society, it seems like women have to do the nurturing or giving, and that's an inferior thing to do. And men do the market exchange things, and not much gift giving. But that is a myth, and we have to treat it as that, and now bring forward the whole caring, gift giving, mothering for everybody. And I do talk about motherers, not just mothers. And I think we are homo materno, the mothering species, the mothering being. We've lost our whole maternal side, and we need to bring it back. And I think these talks on the matriarchies are just fabulous for our own mental health, if nothing else, and a way of tapping into what we could be, instead of the destructive kind of species, or not the species itself, but the nations, and the way we've set up patriarchy, and are at such a critical point now on Earth. And this is the way we can move towards so much better. So thank you so much, Heide and Barbara, for doing. I'll keep on listening to them over and over again, and I will.
Yes, absolutely. I think this notion, Jen has published a book called The Gift in the Heart of Language, and we've experienced this challenge today in this question period, where indigenous cultures don't have a translatable word to the word lesbian, that it's really a oppressed construct that Heide brings forward. And what Jen is also bringing forward is this idea that we need to reveal these very foundational human experiences that still live in indigenous cultures, but our language keeps us from understanding the freedom that we have to be able to love freely and gift freely. So I want to thank you for that round of questions and answers. Those were fabulous. So Liliana, do you have another question for us?
I do have another question for Heide from Nicoletta Salvi. She asked, is it possible to create a matriarchal community without families' bonds? Because I see that during many years, nuclear family destroyed family bonds. And now I think it's very difficult to recreate such things.
Yes, this is an important question. And I studied some new modern community who try to do their best in this field. In traditional matriarchal societies, it's a clan. And the clan follows the mother line. They don't have a need for any nuclear family. But as soon as biological fatherhood was made important, the patriarchal clan developed, and in the modern times, the nuclear family with father at the top and then mother and children in a well-constructed hierarchy. So this nuclear family is a big problem in our current times. For maybe you know that 60% of nuclear families break apart in our Western civilization. So it must be a social form full of constraints and difficulties. But when I talked with modern new communities, which are like an intentional clan, they include nuclear families, father, mother, children, but they try to get rid of any hierarchical attitude. And I think a nuclear family, which is include, we cannot do a sudden jump out of the nuclear family, because biological fatherhood is for us a value too. And they include nuclear families in their community, but it's a bit different. These nuclear families are not on their own, which often causes so many constraints and difficulties. They are embedded in a bigger intentional clan. They take part in the communal life. They, the men and the women and the children have many possibilities to make contact and have care, friendships, and so on. So this nuclear family is not so nuclear as we would like. And I think this situation, to have nuclear families embedded in intentional clans, opens the nuclear family without destroying it. And I think this is a very intelligent and good solution for our modern times. For when I spoke about creating of modern matriarchal societies, we cannot go back to traditional matriarchal societies. We have lived these patriarchal concepts and so on and so on. We start from a different point. So we have to respect what has developed, and we cannot jump out of it. So for example, biological fatherhood and nuclear family. And from this point we start and change the thing, inspired by ideas from traditional matriarch societies, to go some steps into new modern matriarch societies. And this example of this intentional community, which I just described, is an interesting example for going a step further.
Thank you, Heidi. Barbara, do you have anything you'd like to put into that question in terms of, the decolonizing? Some aspects, there are communities that maybe are needing to reestablish this notion of matriarchal
Well,
clans?
the imposed patriarchy has really caused no end to trouble. And that does have to do with the so-called nuclear family, nuclear because it's going to blow up in a big mushroom cloud. One of the things that Iroquois did, and actually all the Woodlanders did, all titles of office were held in the mother's lineage. So, and titles of office are like House of Representatives, senators, that kind of thing was a public office. Clans operated as political parties. So all candidates from the office, for office, for the titles held by the mother, had to be in the mother's line. You were either adopted in or you were born in. If you decided you were going with your father's clan, your biological father's clan, you lost all right to office. Boy, that kept people with the mother's clan. And that actually was beneficial in creating a sense of community among people that, according to Western patterns, would not be that closely related. But in fact, you were closely related because of the clan structure, matriarchy, the mother's sisters, the mother's female lineage cousins. Those are all family. And when you have a family that large, even if you don't get along with this person over here, you're going to get along with 15 over there. There's always a place to go. There's always somebody that you're going to get along with, and it will keep the peace because you're not forced into a house with people that hate each other.
Thanks, Barbara. I just wanted to make a note that in Salon number 2, Alessandra Piccoli, who is in Italy, spoke about the process that her community is creating what she terms, it's a term that I also learned from Heide, their matriclan, and that includes adult males and females and their children. They're not blood related. And she describes the entire process that their community has began with from year 1. They're now in year 3. So if you want to go back and take a look at that, you can find that on our website, maternalgifteconomymovement.org. And you can listen to what Alessandra has to say about their creating their own matriclan. So Liliana, do you have a question for us?
I do. I have a question from Nat Z. And the question is, in matriarchy, this is for both of them. In matriarchy, are the roles and actions different if you are a woman or a man?
Well, the jobs are gendered, but either can take on any job. For example, I was given a warrior's name and some warrior's responsibility that's male. When I'm doing that, I am male, but I'm female, and I do woman things too. So it doesn't work the same way it does in patriarchy, where you're in this little locked prison and you can't move 2 inches. It's a very different kind of thing. Heide?
Yes, I would add something. The problem in our society is that what women do is inferior, is badly paid, and has no prestige. And what men do is just the opposite. So we have to be careful when we hear that in matriarchal societies, the action sphere is gendered. It is gendered, but not hierarchical. It's on the same level. It's horizontal and well balanced. And in Juchitan, as I mentioned before, the men do the agriculture, women do the local market, which is like a local big household. And with the Mozo in China, it's just the opposite. You see, it's not essentialist that it is typical for women to do this or that, or typical for men to do this. It's not the case. Therefore, the individual can change the action sphere. And these 2 different action spheres are not a definition what a woman or a man is, not at all. They developed out of the history of the societies, out of their traditions, and they are not loaded with any fixed role. So individuals can change them. And as I mentioned before, from one matriarch society to the next, you can have completely different two action spheres for women and men. This is what I can say. You see, all ideas that one type of work is better than the other is not existent. So they have no problem with this.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you for that. I think it's Liliana. Oh, go ahead, Heide.
May I add one phrase? I even would say this is not a role. This is a typical term of our time, to have a role, to have a determination, to do some special what you are said, what you have to do. When women do agriculture and men the trade, this is not a role. These are two spheres of a society in the image of the cosmos, who has also two sides, which must be in balance, is a completely different concept of men and women than we are used to with our wrong term of roles.
Again, language being very critical in shaping our understanding. We use the words in English, and then we might get fixated into the definition that's used in patriarchy. So we need to relax into the listening a little bit. Liliana, did you have another question for us?
Yeah, I have a question for Heide from Tina Minkowitz. I have a question also about how to get from here to there, but in relation to the way that mothering and care work is exploited in patriarchy. How do we get from there to a point where women and girls have enough for themselves materially and spiritually to take that responsibility and act as strong, giving to the weak?
Yeah, I tried to give the answer in my speech, and you invite me to put it once again in short. All right, I'll do it. I think women should create their own communities. They choose themselves if they want to live with women only or with women and men. Intentional communities, which gives them a stronger position, especially mothers with children. But these communities are not only to feel good and be together, they are at the same time cooperatives, maybe publishing houses, maybe a school project, and so on and so on. But the problem for us today is to set up these projects and communities, we need some financial means. In the feminist movement, so many projects have been created and they broke down because of the lack of financial means. This brought me to the idea that the challenge and the demand of today is that women should have half of the economy, half of the wealth of a national state where they are living in, 50% for women and their projects. And I think if this would be realized, then women quickly would create communities, schools, universities, academies, because they have the means. They are always deprived of these means to create their own ways. Of course, no state will give half of the wealth, especially not the rich class, for free. Yeah, I think this is a political demand which feminists should raise today. Our foremothers have raised the demand that women can be elected, that women can be teachers at universities, doctors, and so on, and they were successful in the long run. I think when we start today with demanding that the half of the economy of each state, national state, belongs to women, maybe it's a long run until they get it, but then women can create their own projects, their own cultural, social projects, their own cooperatives, their own communities. And in my opinion, very soon matriarchal. yes, this is what I can say to this. These are my ideas, and I hope they are fruitful, and I'm open that these ideas can be tested with many discussions.
Thank you, Heidi. Genevieve, did you want to comment on that question? Do you have any input?
Yes. What I think is that we really need to tell a new story. We need to change the paradigm that we're living in through and imagining a different world and understanding what we're doing wrong and what we could do right, and including gift economy and matriarchal ways, and the criticism of the whole market and the exchange economy and patriarchy. Putting those all together will help us move forward before we have the money or before we have the actual ways of doing it. We need to think of things differently. And when we do make some progress, then we'll be able to keep it instead of losing it immediately. Shift. That's what I have to say.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Barbara.
May I say something?
Heidi, go ahead.
Only a short comment. I fully agree what you say, Genevieve. It's so necessary to spread the knowledge about matriarch societies and about the gift economy. And I hope when it is spread far enough that women get this, and then they can, it's not a contradiction. I think they can start also to demand everywhere where they are, their share, their equal share of the economy, everywhere where they are. And then I'm convinced they will, when they create the project, they will very soon start to make it internally as a gift economy. I have the experience, for example, when I met communities or when I founded the Academy Hagia, we needed some financial means in the beginning to buy a house, to have a land and so on. But inside these communities, immediately start to create the gift economy. And this is very interesting. But at the moment, right, we have to spread the ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Barbara, did you have any thing to offer? You live in a unique place within the United States. The indigenous people are put onto reservations, so they have their own economy within the reservation, and then there's an interface outside. No? Go ahead.
People on reservations are experiencing internal colonialism. About half of living Native Americans are not on reservations. There's a big divide created by government between the two. In Ohio, we don't have reservations, but we have a lot of Indian people. And by and large, the way that the people functioned here is on the thought that the only treaty that the government is going to recognize is a bill of sale. And so people have tried to buy their own land, try to buy the land back. And you have some examples of the Cherokees in the South, for example, bought land back. Tried to do it up here, but my daughter got so sick we had to use money for her illness. So I didn't get around to purchasing the land. I'd still like to if I ever get a chance. But the idea is we want to buy the land back. Now it's ours. Now we can do what we want to with it. People on the reservations are really enthralled to government benefits. And it's unfortunate, it's very unfortunate. And what you wind up seeing are neo-colonial Indians or desperately poor people.
This is the challenge. This is an ongoing challenge. I want to point out that in Salon number 3, Sherry Mitchell speaks about her being able to buy land and for her to be able to establish from the ground up a matriarchal, a grandmother's council there that will help to organize the rising up of that land. So she's in the very first stages. You can actually visit our website and listen to her talk. And then along with Alessandra Piccoli in salon number 2 is Angela Dolmich. And Angela Dolmich talks about the community that she also helped to organize the indigenous women in Colombia. And that was the first thing that they had to do, was from the ground up, literally get land for the women. And they have a matriarchal community there that's now 18 years old. So I want to encourage you, and those are infused with this notion of the gift economy and how they're at the foundation. Once they become this community, they're able to work with the values within the community itself and then interface with the larger world. It's very exciting. Judith, do you have another question for us?
So let me just add one remark. With buying land and houses, I know this is a patriarchal principle, but we start to convert this patriarchal principle to create matriarchal niches, spaces, and places. It's changing the situation again.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's some really interesting questions here, but the one I'm going to ask is the one that has to do with the gift economy and the interface between gift economies and non-gift economies. And how do you, Barbara mentioned Cortez, how do you keep from being exploited if you're giving gifts in the context or to tribes or to people that don't understand a gift economy?
Who was that to, Barbara? Was that directed to someone?
It was directed to both of the speakers, particularly Barbara, because she's the one who talked about it.
Barbara, would you like to tackle that first, and then we'll see if we can bring in Heidi and Jen?
I think it's a numbers game. If you and Native America doesn't have the numbers right now. If you look at India, how did they get rid of the British? It was a numbers game. There were more Indians than there were British. How did China get rid of the colonizer? There were more Chinese than British. In Native America, it's another matter. Now, one of the big things that's going on right now is the recognition that most Latinx people are Native Americans. And there's a big fight going on, and there will be a bigger fight coming, but I'm all for recognizing that all the people who are indigenous. And that will add a certain number of numbers. I don't think just talking about justice is going to move people who are dedicated to the exchange economy. They will not be moved, and they will use violence at every opportunity. So there's got to be a lot of cleverness in putting that together. Some of that is going to be land ownership and proper treatment of the land, because right now there's only so much raiding you can do before it's a diminishing returns proposition. They've hit that brick wall. So they're going to start sliding down the wall now with their exchange, extraction, exploitation. If there are other models going on of people who are in production themselves, who have a gift situation going on, people will start gravitating. It's going to be a long process, and I don't know if humanity is going to survive it, frankly.
Thank you, Barbara. Heidi, would you like to offer some input to that? Yes.
Yes. In my speech, I mentioned this problem that gift giving without a well-defined borders can become very quickly self-exploitation. Especially, and I didn't speak about indigenous people and their arrangements and how they do it. I spoke about our Western civilizations where we all live in. When we start with gift giving without having a very well-defined circle, then we will very soon end up in self-exploitation. Therefore, I suggested that it's a form of a circle. You can have different sizes of circles. An internal cycle, an internal circle of a community which practice gift giving within, or a local circle, or a regional circle, or interregional circle. But at every time, the women, the people in these circles have to know where's the boundary of this circle. They can do gift giving within these circles. They can be very broad, but they cannot do it without these boundaries, or they will be exploited by the Western civilization where we are in. So it's important to create these gift giving circles of different sizes. It can even include interregional levels, which is very big, and which there exist examples in indigenous societies who created very broad gift-giving circles. As Barbara has given an example, I can give in another one. This is the famous Kula ring of the Trobriand Islanders, who created a gift-giving circle of a diameter of 2,000 females with different archipelago, with different island groups, only a gift-giving circle for creating friendship and keeping peace. This is a very good motive to do it. But it's always a circle and not open to people who want to exploit the gift givers. This is not possible. So the women or the people who want to create a gift economy have to be well aware where are the boundaries of their gift giving. This is the answer I would like to give here.
Yeah, Angela Domish actually does that in her Columbia group. I think that's a good point.
Thank you, Heide. Jen, would you like to offer some words to that question?
Well, yes, I believe again that it's the idea of the gift economy that needs to be shared among the people that are doing it. And they need to understand how difficult it is in a society that's based on exchange. So there's a common understanding that needs to be created, which allows the solidarity. If people don't know what they're doing, they're going to be overtaken by giving too much, or trying to get too much, or letting other people in outside groups take too much, that sort of a thing. So really the way to do it is to get rid of the ideology of exchange and bring up a new understanding based on the gift economy and mothering.
Thank you, Jen. I see that we're getting very close to the end of our time here. So I wanted to just highlight a couple of things and let each of the speakers have a few words. If you haven't seen our original conference that happened on November the 27th, I want to invite you to take a look at that and review it, because the context, it creates a context of understanding for how all of this matriarchy and these indigenous values are fundamental to the gift economy. And we need to have the gift economy and a peace economy, which brings us to, again, salon number 3 with Jody Evans. And Jody Evans talks specifically about a peace economy. So with that, let's see if, Heidi, do you have some last words for us? Because you do have, I'm sorry, my screen keeps shaking. Heidi, you do have a 2-year program that is open right now, taking applications where people can apply to do your modern matriarchal studies symposium or intensive in English online. Is that correct?
Yes, Letitia, this is correct. Thank you for mentioning it. I have taught 40 years modern matriarchal studies in Germany, in the German-speaking countries in German. And now I feel it's really time that I invite women and men from internationally, from all the English-speaking countries who want to go deeper into the knowledge about modern matriarchal, deeper into the knowledge about matriarchal societies and study modern matriarchal and study modern matriarchal studies. And so I set up a 2 years course with several webinars for all who want to join in and to learn more about it. And the goal of these studies is to become an independent lecturer on modern matriarchal studies. And I think it should be spread everywhere, just as the gift economy idea should be spread everywhere. So I'm trying to spread it now everywhere where people are ready to do it in English at the internet. And you are invited if you want to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. There are so many questions that have maybe not have been able to be answered. I want you all to know that your questions will be sent to the presenters, and we'll try to get you some answers. And Barbara, did you want to say some closing words? And you have written so many books, and I want those of you who are viewing us right now, both Barbara and Heidi have videos on the Gift Economy website. It's an archive that Jen originally put up so you can see them. But Barbara, do you have some closing words for us?
Well, it's hard to be wise on command.
You're always wise.
The major thing to appreciate is that there's a twinship. I think that's the central, most important thing to remember. You have to have the two, and they have to be complements, and they have to coordinate. If you don't have that, if they're going in opposite directions, it will always fall apart. So the idea is to see what the haves are and bring them together.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Jen, do you have some closing words for us?
Just thank you so much. I'm very grateful to Barbara and Heide for these wonderful talks that you've given. And we'll be thinking about what you say and what you've said for a long time. Thank you so much. And thank you, Letitia.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jen. You're very welcome. For those of you listening with us in the room right now, if you know how to save the chat, you want to go down to the bottom of the screen right next to your name or where the panels are, and you can save everything that's in that chat to your own computer, and it has links in it. You can always contact us at maternalgifteconomy@gmail.com if you have any questions. I want to thank everyone for coming today. It's because of you and the fact that we really want to get this message out. We live in such chaos right now that we're hoping that with the cracks in the system, that modern matriarchal studies arise, the allyship with Indigenous cultures arise, that the gift economy arises. And I want to thank Diane and Elena, who are behind the scenes supporting us in the technical realm, Liliana and Judith, who were our questioners. Last but not least, Heidi and Barbara, just fabulous talks, and people will be listening to these and watching these online. I want to remind you all that we have these salons every 2 weeks. Our next salon is going to be January 30th with Jen. Jan Vaughn and Cheeky Estrada. Cheeky Estrada heads up a Montessori school. So we're going to move into the realm of children and education and all wonderful things that Jen has to offer. Remember that this salon is being videotaped, so you can watch it again and capture all the bits of wisdom that you missed. Thank you all so much for coming. Please take really good care of yourself. Be safe, be kind to one another, and give your gifts. Most importantly, remember to receive your gift well. Take good care, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye for now.